Tier 5. Ultra Deep Sea. Species being named after Pokemon. There's a shockingly large amount of species that were named after Pokemon. I'm gonna probably butcher some of these pronunciations, but the most interesting ones are the Bulbasaurus Philoxrion, an extinct Decenodont, that's apparently how it's pronounced, which I could go into some biology stuff, but nowadays this old dinosaur is most closely related to an elephant. There's 4 different insects named after Pikachu. 2 of them are spiders, so you can look them up on your own. I was way too scared, arachnophobia is crazy. And lastly, the most interesting by far, named off of my favorite Pokemon, there is the Aerodactylus. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Aerodactyl is now a real dinosaur. And yeah, it is a form of pterodactyl, so it fits the design. And it's from the Jurassic period, meaning that one of these little guys from Jurassic Park could be Aerodactyl, though he's a bit smaller than those. Scrapped Mega Flygon. When asked in an interview about Mega Evolutions, art director of Game Freak, Ken Sugimori, stated that there was plans on having a Mega Flygon, but they were never able to complete a design for the Mega and it never got implemented. Flygon's by far one of the most requested Mega Evolutions, and it's still just kind of shocking it never got one. Maybe in ZA it can get one? It's not the Hoenn region, but I mean, the ORAS games got a lot of Megas, and who knows, maybe someday we'll get a Mega Flygon. Imakuni. This is Tomoaki Imakuni, a musician known for composing some of the Pokemon anime's soundtrack and for being very eccentric. In Japan, he's heavily promoted in the TCG version of the game and has been featured in several cards, most notably the Imakuni supporter card, which confuses your Pokemon when activated, and he also helped design the original Pokemon Ranger game and its sequel. This guy's by far one of the biggest fans and contributors to the whole franchise. The Raichu you traded me went and evolved. On Cinnabar Island in the original Red and Blue games, there's an NPC that offers an Electrode for a Raichu as a trade. But for some reason, when you trade a Raichu to the Electrode, the NPC states that your Raichu went and evolved. Obviously, Raichu can't evolve, and this probably confused a lot of people. Turns out it was a sort of mistranslation. In the Japanese version of Blue, for the 2 in-game trades using this text template, the player needs to trade a Kadabra for this one and a Haunter for the other one, both of which evolve by trading. So the NPC claiming that they went and evolved works. In this circumstance, it doesn't. Raichu can't evolve. Just weird that they used the same template and didn't really think about it. Plusle and Minun in Smash Bros. Smash Bros. Brawl had several cut characters with some bits of code left. These characters were Dixie Kong, Dr. Mario, Roy, Toon Zelda, Toon Sheik, Mewtwo, and Plusle and Minun. So at some point in development, Plusle and Minun were going to be playable characters. They ended up getting cut as playable characters, but at least appeared in the game from the Pokeball item. Later on in the series, Mewtwo would be added as a character, but Plusle and Minun are still unplayable. Giratina 666 connection. Giratina is known as the Devil Pokemon by many fans of Platinum, and it turns out that the whole devil connection wasn't fully intended. In reality, Giratina is supposed to be the personification of antimatter, and his distortion world keeps the stability of the universe together. But there's a lot of things that sort of point to it at least being an equivalent of the devil in the Pokemon universe. Like the distortion world, well, being kind of scary looking, you could say it mimics hell. Giratina was also banished by Arceus for being too violent, it being a renegade Pokemon, or traitor as renegade can also mean. Same with Satan, traitor to God in the Bible. And lastly, it's brought up a lot that Giratina's normal and origin form have 6 spikes on its wing, 6 on its neck, and 6 on its leg. So it's kinda hard to say it wasn't at least heavily inspired by the devil. Eternal Flower Floette. This one's sort of a double entry because I forgot to do an entry on the Kalos War, and it adds a lot to this entry if I explain that one first. So, the story of the Kalos War and AZ in Pokemon X and Y. The character AZ befriended a unique Floette 3,000 years prior to X and Y. This Floette was everything to him. It was given to him by his late mother, after all. At the time, there was a raging war with 2 massive regions of Pokemon that claimed thousands of lives. And being a king back then, people really wanted to hurt AZ, and a way of doing this was to kill his Floette. So he was given the body of his now dead Floette he cherished so much. And with his power and influence, he was able to eventually make a machine that would grant eternal life. So he brought Floette back, but in a fit of rage, he changed the machine into what was dubbed the ultimate weapon, and he used the weapon to stop the war. But Floette was so disgusted by how many Pokemon were killed that it left him. We pick back up 3,000 years later in Pokemon X and Y, where Team Flare wants to bring back the ultimate weapon. And to do this, they kidnap AZ and steal the key around his neck to use the weapon that was hidden underground. But Team Flare was eventually stopped by the main character, and wasn't able to use the weapon. With AZ freed and the world saved, they threw a parade where AZ looks up to the sky, sees a sparkle, his Floette flies down and returns to AZ being his Pokemon again. So with this Floette being so important to the story, you'd think that you'd be able to obtain it from either normal gameplay or an event. I mean, after all, it was fully coded into the game and has a unique move, just not obtainable. So it was most likely planned to be an event Pokemon, but was never given out. A lot of people think that it was going to be a mystery gift Pokemon given out with Pokemon Z, but we never got that. And Z had been planned to come out and was under development, so with Z being cancelled, this Floette never got a chance to be attainable. But now with the Legend ZA coming out, maybe we'll finally be able to get this Eternal Flower Floette. Playing Pokemon Gold, Silver, Crystal on a normal Game Boy. The Game Boy Color amassed a library of 576 games over a 4-year period. While the majority of these games are Game Boy Color exclusive, around 30% of them you could still play on the original Game Boy, just obviously without color. And one of these games that was backwards compatible, or I guess multiple, were the Gen 2 games. Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Yeah, they ran fine, worked as Pokemon games and all, just sorta looked like the Gen 1 games with all the new content of Gen 2. Gen 2 and 3 incompatibility. This is a list of all the Pokemon games that can trade with each other. Whether it's through directly trading between the games, Poké Transporter, Pokemon Home, most of these games have compatibility between each other, especially between subsequent gens, all except Gens 2 and 3. Generation 2 was originally meant to be the end of Pokemon, so no one was thinking of having a way to trade it with the next console. So to this day, there's no official way to get any Gen 2 Pokemon to Gen 3. You can have them in the same games, but the earliest generation that you can do this in would be Gen 7, with the use of Poké Transporter only if you had bought the Virtual Console versions of Gen 2. A bit unfortunate, but with the Gen 3 remakes of Red and Blue and Gen 4 remakes of Gold and Silver, it's not something people really talk about a whole lot or really care about much these days. Poké MMO. Launching in August of 2012, Poké MMO is a multi-region Pokemon game where you can start in whatever region you want, be able to travel between them, which is a massive thing, and even play with other people. It's sort of a mandatory thing you play with other people since it's an MMO, but you can play with friends if you want. The way this game is even still up is through a lot of legal loopholes in a way. Technically, all Poké MMO supplies is online coding and events for ROMs that they don't distribute, so that's how they don't get in trouble. Basically, all you need to install it is the actual installer and some very legally acquired files that someone might have renamed ROMs. I don't know why they would do that. And then yeah, it just works. But yeah, this MMO fan game has tons of events. You can travel between all the regions of Pokemon. There's some features that were never a thing in the actual Pokemon games, and you can play with hundreds of other people. It's a really fun experience and it's all free, so I highly recommend you try it out. Capsule Monsters. Capsule Monsters was the earliest version of Pokemon that was proposed to Nintendo by Satoshi Tajiri in 1990. With issues of trademarking the name Capsule Monsters, it was later changed to Capumon and then eventually Pocket Monsters. There's lots of drawings that Satoshi made for the game to propose to Nintendo, and looking at these, they for sure look way different, but most of his vision still got turned into reality by the time it came out. Even a lot of the old designs for the Capsule Monsters look near identical to the ones we have nowadays. Pokemon Sword and Shield League and F Nintendo. F Nintendo was a website that published lots of reviews for games and talked about them. They very closely worked with Nintendo on a lot of their games, but when Sword and Shield were announced, F Nintendo had a leak where tons of unannounced Pokemon were put onto the internet, and it was just a disaster. Nintendo ended all ties with them, and they've seemingly just shut down completely. Pokemon movie manga adaptations. Kinda like how in the West, there's sometimes comics made off of movies, in Japan there's the same thing with manga, and tons of Pokemon movies got this treatment. Not a whole lot to say about these. I mean, it is just the movies in manga form. It's really cool, but it is the same story. Scrapped Gen 1 female protagonist. Originally, Generation 1 was going to have a female character you could play as. The female main characters of 1 and 2 weren't playable until either their remakes or, well, Gen 2, its third game. Crystal having Chris being the first ever female main character in Pokemon. Gen 1 would also get a girl main character, but that wouldn't be until the Fire Red and Leaf Green remakes, with her name being Leaf. Draco Meteor / Steel Beam naming contests. Draco Meteor was the first ever fan-given name to a move. CoroCoro held a contest available to Japanese readers to name the strongest dragon-type move. The winner was what translated into Meteor Shower. They did this with Steel Beam as well, just for the most powerful Steel-type move, and hopefully they do it again. It was a really big deal to be able to name a move, and it's such a fun idea to let fans of the series contribute a bit. Baby Nidoqueens in the anime. For some reason, in the Pokemon anime, there was a scene where it showed tons of baby Rhyhorns and Nidoqueens. And Rhyhorn is fine, it's the first in the evolution line, that makes sense, it being a baby Pokemon, but Nidoqueen doesn't make any sense at all. Some fans got really annoyed by this, thinking that the writers of the Pokemon anime don't know anything about Pokemon, which for some things it really can't seem like this. Just seems like a weird choice for this one. I don't know why they would have baby Nidoqueens considering it's a fully evolved Pokemon, not even the middle evolution. Just kinda weird. Thufizzer. In the Pokemon manga, Team Rocket did lots of research on Pokemon, specifically Eevee, to hopefully get an idea of how to make an all-powerful Pokemon. Eventually, they were able to make a machine that allowed for the creation of a new Pokemon through the power of the gym badges. To make this new Pokemon, Team Rocket captured the 3 legendary birds and stole the badges from Red. Once they activated the machine, all 3 Pokeballs fused together, creating what they dubbed Thufizzer, the merged form of all 3 legendary birds. This creature had the moves Thunder, Fire Spin, Blizzard, Gust, and Sky Attack. Eventually, they were able to defeat this new creature by using the combined attacks of Flamethrower, Hydro Pump, and Solar Beam to cause the fused bird to separate back into the 3 legendary birds. Then they all flew off back into the wild. This Thufizzer, or as a lot of fans call it, Zapmolkuno, never showed up again, unfortunately. It was really cool seeing a fusion at all, and especially of it being the 3 legendary birds, but this thing never came back. Censored Transgender Beauty in X and Y. And while I couldn't find anything for Censored Trans Beauty in X and Y, one thing that kept popping up all the time was this specific trainer you could battle. In X and Y, you could battle a female trainer that says, "Yes, a mere half year ago I was a black belt." Quite the transformation, wouldn't you say? Aside from the black belt being a male-only trainer class in Pokemon, the way the character mentioned previously being a black belt is said almost like I was previously a male black belt when translated from Japanese. And when it is translated from Japanese directly, it does mention this part here with them saying medical science is awesome. So yeah, this character's for sure trans. It's just really cool seeing that type of representation in a game from 2013. Dusk Noir Grandma. In 2020, someone on the Pokemon-themed 4chan board made a thread with a photo of their Nintendo Switch playing Pokemon Sword and Shield alongside the caption, "Playing Pokemon in memory of Grandma. Rip Grandma." And the photo appeared to have been taken at an open casket service. The user then posted a time-stamped photo of their shiny Dusk Noir on the Switch with what is assumed to be their deceased grandmother. Lots of people obviously expressed their disbelief, shock, amusement, and in total, the whole thread got over 2,900 replies before being archived. Just a insane thing to post, and the image of him holding the Switch spawned a lot of memes, of them holding it over other memes or images that I don't really feel comfortable showing on YouTube. Pikachurin. In 2008, there was a protein discovered that was named Pikachurin. This protein was named after Pikachu. It was named after Pikachu's, quote, lightning fast moves. Very similar to the animal entry, but it's weird that something like a protein got to be named off of a Pokemon. And yeah, that's the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed. If you did, like and subscribe. And as always, have a great rest of your day, week, month, and I'll see you in the next one.